Kia ora, I'm Erin J. Doyle. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to show you the spreadsheet that I'm using to keep track of everything in my Camino story. This is a spreadsheet that I have filled in as I was writing it, keeping in mind that for the vast majority of the story I was a discovery writer, so this was how I kept track of what I was writing because I didn't have a plan. Now that it's finished, it looks like the plan that I should have started with. But at any rate, there is a spreadsheet. It's all nicely color-coded so that I can visualize what's happening without actually having to read the information, but I'll show you what it is and you can see what I've been doing. So this is a copy of my spreadsheet. I've deleted all of the words so there can be no spoilers. I've just kept the word counts so you can see what I'm kind of doing with that. So here I have everything arranged by chapter for obvious reasons, and then as I've written it I have recorded the day of the week and the location as I've been writing so that obviously I can remain consistent about day of week, but also so I know where my character is as she's travelling and I'm describing the correct place. And then this column I inserted after I started editing, so that while I was working on rewrites and things, if I came across something that I couldn't fix right now, like I knew it was wrong but I didn't know how to fix it, I could make a note in that chapter that I needed to come back to it. Or as I was writing I would make a change, as I was editing I would make a change, and then I would realise that I would have to go back and change something in a chapter I'd already edited for consistency purposes or to set it up or what have you, but I might not want to go back and figure that stuff out just at that moment. So this was a way of me keeping track of all those things I needed to come back and fix later but wasn't going to worry about just yet. And then these columns are all things that I filled in as I was writing. So we've got columns for the main event and the secondary event for each chapter. So I'd, being a discovery writer, write the entire chapter and then I'd have to come and fill this in and figure out what the main events or secondary important events were in each chapter, which was particularly helpful because this is not based on my life, but it is taken from or inspired by places that I've been and things that I have done on the Camino, and there were definitely chapters along the way where I felt that lots of stuff happened when I had been in that town and I had included lots of interesting things, but when it actually came to telling a story maybe I couldn't identify what the main events were. It was just kind of more anecdotes than story, if that makes any sense. So that's why I have these two columns there to help me keep track of that. And then I have these two columns which cover things that we learn about the main character and world building. So the first time I would mention anything like where the character grew up or you know, what a certain building was, anything like that, it would go here. And this was done for consistency. So I might you know, come back to fill in a new chapter's information and realise that I was now recording, oh yes, my character has black hair, and then see that 3 chapters earlier I had mentioned she was blonde or something like that. I don't think I have actually specified my character's hair colour. Okay, I may have to think about that. But that was why I wanted to list when specific things were mentioned. It also meant that I could, as I was writing and discovering things about the character, I might learn something about the character well into the writing process. It was helpful to then see on the spreadsheet that that information had been introduced into the story quite late, because I had only just learned that, but maybe I needed to go back and introduce it earlier. So seeing when specific information was introduced in the course of the story was also quite helpful. So that's what these two are, and then obviously word count, pretty self-explanatory. The other thing that I've done here is where an edit needs to be made, particularly if it's quite a big one, I've made it in red. And then if it's not red, pink. If it's not really an edit, but maybe a tweak here or there is needed, or if I just need to double check something, then I've made it yellow. With the other colours, these are representing moments in the story where events or information have come up which are relevant to specific plots. So you can kind of see here, opening chapter, something happens which is relevant to the yellow plot, we learn something about the character that's relevant to the orange plot, so that's probably going to be foreshadowing, and then we've got some events which are carrying those plots forward, and then it's not down until what, chapter 8, that the first hints or events around the green plot are introduced. And then we have this big thing in the middle where there's no colours or hardly any colours. This is why I wanted it colour coded. If I had to sit here and read all of the words, I would lose track of what was foreshadowing or hinting or building towards something in a whole bunch of words in the middle. But if it's all colour coded, I can just at a glance say, oh look, I did kind of forget about the green plot entirely in the middle of the book, and I've barely mentioned the yellow and the orange. Then when we scroll down, you've got the introduction of the blue plot towards the end, and you can see the yellow plot is kind of appearing quite a bit, the green plot returns, and the orange plot maybe needs some more added to it. These 3 black lines are kind of like, I don't know what the word I want to use here. These are kind of, I guess, deadlines for myself, not in terms of time for writing it, but for events unfolding in the story. So, for example here, in order for this yellow event to take place and contribute to this important thing for the yellow plot, something may have had to occur before that moment. So I've put a black line to show myself that that thing, whatever it was, had to happen before that line. And then the second one, something had to happen for, let's say, the orange one to occur, and then again I needed to make sure that it happened before this specific chapter in order for the event to occur at the right point in the story. So you can kind of see here, you know, the blue doesn't arrive until after this black line, so maybe a certain thing needs to happen before the black line, and it's only after that event that these blue scenes or things we learn about the character can start showing up. So that's my colour coding system. I've also used the red to highlight the chapters which have a lower word count, a word count lower than 1000. I picked 1000 because it seems like a good number, I guess. It is quite a lot lower than the mean, which is 1600 words. So it means if a chapter has less than 1000 words, then it's like, you know, a third of the length of the average chapter. That is kind of an arbitrary thing, but I don't know, for some reason I felt a need to highlight based on that 1000 words thing. I don't know, round numbers maybe, metric brain. So because I've highlighted these, I can easily identify where they are in the story, and when I need to go back and add little bits and pieces in, but it doesn't really matter where I mention them, as long as perhaps it's before a certain event like the black line, then I can look at this and say, well, these chapters are really small, so maybe these are the chapters where I throw in an additional conversation to, you know, introduce this information, or I need to have the character meet the person in this chapter instead of the one I had planned because that chapter's already quite big, and oh look, this one's quite short, that kind of thing. And then at the bottom I just have a graph which I'm going to cut the bottom off because it has my chapter names on it. This is just the word count, so you can see I've got a couple of really big chapters right at the beginning, and then there's kind of a trend of decreasing, although around the middle everything is sort of fluctuating somewhere around the average. I do have the less than 1,000 word chapters popping up kind of throughout. Obviously there's none just here. Anyway, the point of this, I don't need to explain what I'm seeing. The point is that this gives me a visual way of seeing where the weight of the words are, and it means that with the editing process, if I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I need to cut some words out, maybe I need to revisit these chapters, or you know, if there's something I need to add in, it shows me again where those shorter chapters are. It's just a visualization of the list. I just think that the more ways I can visualize it without having to read stuff, the easier it is for me to see a pattern in what I've written and try and shape the pattern into something pretty, rather than just reading like a checklist of things and hoping that I wrote the checklist in the right order. I think that's everything I needed to say. I don't know now. With NaNoWriMo about to start, this spreadsheet is going to be on my screen a lot. It's going to be used to help me figure out where I need to go back and fix things. I have previously talked about how my goal is to finish the last few chapters of the book. You can kind of see on the spreadsheet the big cluster of blue and some black lines saying, you know, something has to be written before that, and then a big cluster of blue. Oddly enough, I have chosen blue to represent the plot that is emotionally taxing to me to write, so you can kind of see what I'm dealing with, I guess, in a colour-coded manner. So I'm going to start off with just working on those little sections, and then hopefully I'll get finished and I'll be able to go back and fix all the red. It does look appalling and nightmarish just because of the amount of red, but I do think I might be lying to myself here, but I'm going to say that it's worth remembering that I don't necessarily keep the spreadsheet perfectly up to date. There may be stuff that I've already fixed that shouldn't be in red anymore. I'm going to tell myself that. But for NaNoWriMo, I'm going to keep the spreadsheet open and I'm going to very actively update it. And I think what I might do, instead of trying to keep track of time spent writing or words written, because that's kind of irrelevant when you're editing, especially when you're editing something emotionally taxing and you're going to have to take lots of breaks, instead of doing any of that kind of stuff, what I'm going to do is track how many boxes I managed to fix. So at the beginning of NaNoWriMo, I'm just going to count up how many red and yellow boxes I have and see at the end of the month how many are either a different colour because I have introduced enough information that they now fit into a specific plot or have something useful or you know, main eventy happening, or you know, how many I've managed to just generally edit and repair. Obviously it depends on why they've been highlighted. So that's the extent of sort of tracking of progress that I'm prepared to do for this. As mentioned in the last video, because I'm expecting to cry a lot this month or this coming month, I think that's probably as big of a tracking thing as I want to commit to. I don't want to put any pressure on myself to hit a certain goal. I just want to use it as a, oh look, I achieved this. Hopefully I will have finished, but maybe I'll have just achieved, like, I have done these chapters and then, you know, unreaded several boxes, or unreaded, that was a weird phrase, fixed several issues. I'm going to say that. So that's my plan for November. Hopefully between having sort of a bit of a list to work through and taking breaks and taking pressure off and rewarding myself with delicious foods along the way, hopefully I'll reach the end of November with a completed, or at least almost completed book. Maybe. Wish me luck, And let me know down in the comments what you're doing for Nano. I would love to cheer you on. If you've enjoyed this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you're new around here, maybe consider hitting subscribe and ringing that bell so you can stay up to date. And I'll see you next time, hopefully without tears in my eyes. Bye!